September 13th, 2021 of the Dubuque Community School District Board of Education is called to order. Our mission is to develop world-class learners and citizens of character in a safe and inclusive learning community. Roll call, please.
Barton.
Here.
Bradley.
Here.
Parks. Here. Prohaska.
Here.
Ryan.
Here.
Sancy.
Here.
Whitman. Here.
All right, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Someday we'll have helpers, right? Back here to help
Someday
us? Because we
soon,
can't,
hopefully.
we struggle. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good.
I move the Board of Education approve the agenda as submitted.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as submitted. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
I move the Board of Education approve the minutes of the regular meeting on August 9th, 2021 as submitted.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the Board of Education approve the minutes of the regular meeting on August 9th, 2021 as submitted. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Board salutes, and I believe, Ms. Bradley, you have one?
I
to
do,
start.
thank you. I'm delighted to offer a board salute on behalf of us to the district team members responsible for developing and delivering the district's Lumen Social Emotional Learning Training for staff. Recognizing that the well-being of our staff is of such importance to providing an outstanding learning experience for our students, this training was developed specifically for staff to focus on their own personal, social, emotional well-being. The program has a strong research base, including the CASEL standards, 6 Seconds, the Emotional Intelligence Network, and the University of Dubuque. To start the year, all teachers participated in the training, as well as various other employee groups, with this work continuing throughout the first half of the year. So very special thanks to the team involved in providing the training, and thanks to the various partners who have helped fund it. I'd like to name those: the District Teacher Quality Committee, the Foundation for Dubuque Public Schools, the McDonough Foundation, and the United Way of Dubuque Area Tri-States. This is an exciting program, and I'm just thrilled that it's in motion and covering our district. So.
It is good. Yes, thank you, Nancy. Any other board salutes? All right. All right, we're going to have a project overview on the senior high school Phase 2 theatrical luminaries and accessories project. Mark.
Good evening. As many of you are aware, this really isn't an overall project. It's kind of a smaller piece of a larger project. So this is really just a bid package for just the theatrical lighting for senior Phase 2, really just the spotlights and just the plug and play lights, cords, that type of stuff, specifically for the auditorium. So that's really all that this was.
Okay. Thank
And
you.
I think the bid came in a little bit under what we expected. So.
Yep, we'll review that.
Good on that.
Okay, I move that the Board of Education receive and file proof of publication of notice of public hearing on the senior high school theatrical luminaries and accessories project and authorize payment of legal notice publication costs to the Telegraph Herald.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the Board of Education receive and file proof of publication of notice of public hearing on the senior high school theatrical luminaries and accessories project and authorize payment of the legal notice publication costs to the Telegraph Herald. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Time for public comment. Anybody wishing to comment on this specific part of this project can do so at this time. No, there being none.
I move that the Board of Education approve the authorizing resolution as submitted, adopting the plans, specifications, form of contract, and estimated total cost of the senior high school theatrical luminaries and accessory project.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the Board of Education approve the authorizing resolution as submitted, adopting the plan, specifications, form of contract, and estimated total cost of the senior high school theatrical luminaries and accessory project. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. The review of the bids.
So on August 12th, we opened bids at 2 o'clock over at Buildings and Grounds, and we received 3 bids for this project. And the range was from about $98,445 up to $127,980. So with the low bid being Norcosco.
Okay.
And the budget for this placeholder was $125,000.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
I move that the Board of Education approve and award the construction bid for the senior high school theatrical luminaries and accessory project as recommended and further outlined in the authorizing resolution to Norcosco, Inc. in the amount of $98,445.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the Board of Education approve and award the construction bid for the senior high school theatrical luminaries and accessories project as recommended and further outlined in the authorizing resolution to Norcosco, Inc. in the amount of $98,445. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
I move that the Board of Education suspend the rules of order and go into open forum.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the Board of Education suspend the rules of order and go into open forum. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Any persons wishing to address the board can do so at this time. You'll need to come up and state your name and your association with the district. And we will be limiting any comments to 3 minutes. If there's anyone wishing to do so, may come up to the podium at this time.
I do think we had one person register in advance, and so generally we start with the person who registered in advance, if that's okay.
Sure.
Go ahead and invite Lisa.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was late.
That's all right, just on time.
Yeah. My name's Lisa Tyler. I live at 3051 Carter Road. I currently have 5 children that attend the district. 4 of them are currently in-person learning, and 1 is too young to be vaccinated. And because there wasn't a mask mandate, he is going to school online for now. So the reason that I wanted to talk to you, and I have sent you all letters, so this isn't a big surprise, but I did want to bring it up again, is my concern about the quarantine program, or the way that the Dubuque schools are quarantining students. So I should note that not only am I a concerned parent, but I'm also a nurse practitioner. I'm a hospitalist, so I've been taking care of very ill COVID-19 patients since the beginning of the pandemic. So as you know, COVID-19 is somewhat different than a lot of communicable diseases because it is so contagious and it's asymptomatically spread. So when you get the flu, maybe you're sick for a day and you're spreading it because you don't feel well, and then you're in bed. With COVID, you can spread it for 5 to 8 days, you feel fine, and you never really go to bed because a lot of people don't feel sick. Not everyone, there's some very sick people, but some people just never feel very ill. And that's why for every person that has COVID, we feel they spread it to about 8 or 9 people. With influenza, maybe 1 or 2. So quarantining is very important because of that. So first and foremost, I recognize the difficult situation the schools are in, especially with the mask mandate being taken out of your hands, although this has just been overturned. And I didn't come to talk about that, and I'm sure you're not ready to talk about it, but that is interesting. At any rate, what happened was I had heard about a student, and obviously I won't say any names and I want to protect anonymity here, but I had heard that there was a student who was exposed to COVID, and the very next day was back in school, not wearing a mask, and I had some concerns, so I reached out to the school nurse because I couldn't find anywhere online what the quarantine process was, and she told me, and again, utmost respect for the nurses, she said that basically they're defining a student as being a student who's been, how we say, what's the word I'm looking for, has been come in contact with someone who's positive if you had been by them for 15 minutes during a cumulative period through the day. Now the CDC says it's 15 minutes throughout a 24-hour period. So if you were with them 5 minutes at lunch and 5 minutes in gym and 5 minutes at recess, that's 15 minutes, whereas the Dubuque school is following guidelines where I'm not sure where they're getting those from, but they're saying it has to be cumulative. So that, first, I was a little bit unsure why they were doing that. And then secondly, she said, basically they're telling parents, here's the deal, you can keep them home for 10 days or have them tested at 7, and then if they're negative, they can go back, or you can just send them to school. So to me, that made no sense. I'm sure my mouth dropped when she said that, and I said, you know, what guidelines are you getting this from? This doesn't follow any CDC guidelines. Giving parents that choice really puts them in a bind. You're going to have parents that won't make the right decision because they're going to miss work. You may have older students who may have to miss the football game, may have to miss a dance. It really puts parents in a bad position. So she told me to call Allie White, which I did, and Allie said they're following a guideline, or not even a guideline, a recommendation that was sent down in May from the Iowa Department of Public Health that basically said, hey, you know, COVID's not so bad anymore, which in May it wasn't. And because of that, we need to think twice about quarantining kids. And I'm sorry, I know this might go a little longer than 3 minutes. I'll speed it up. But at any rate, the Iowa Department of Public Health said we should let parents decide. And I really feel that follows no science whatsoever. And that in May, yeah, we were coming out of COVID. There were vaccines. It made sense. It made some sense to maybe look at things a little differently. It doesn't now. And the Iowa Department of Public Health hasn't come out with any new guidelines, which is also not good. But my concern is we have to follow science, and we have to take that away from the parents. I'm not asking you to mask everybody. I'm not asking you to do a lot of things that I think we should be doing. But that quarantine needs to be, if a kid was exposed and they meet those requirements, they really need to be sent home or tested to come back to school. And I just wanted to bring that out there because I didn't know about that, and I think there's a lot of parents that have no idea that that's going on. And we have to keep our kids safe. We can't cut these corners. So that's what I wanted to bring to talk to you about. So,
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else wishing to address the board at this time?
Hi, Rebecca Jones, and 3417 Arrowwood Lane. I have a 6th grader at Roosevelt Middle School, and I am absolutely here to ask you to please put a mask mandate back in effect for all the Dubuque Community Schools. I was hoping for that before school started. We kept our children virtual last year, and you're all educators. I don't need to go into detail. That was incredibly hard on them, and that was with myself and my husband home full-time to help. My son really didn't want to start middle school online. We let him start the school. He is superb at wearing his mask. It took until last Monday night, he came down with a cough, runny nose. We took him in for testing on Tuesday. There were no rapid tests left in Dubuque. We took him into our pediatrician. It took until Friday to get our results back. Thank goodness he was negative. I hate to think of how many more times this is going to happen without a mask mandate in place. My mother is currently a resident at Eagle Point Place. They have 100% of their staff vaccinated and 99% of their residents vaccinated right now. They currently have an outbreak of 20 residents testing positive for COVID in the last week, and they have 9 more tests pending, and I expect those numbers to go up. I see no difference between their community open areas in the school buildings that we are attending in. I'm asking you to please follow the advice of the American Association of Pediatrics, of the CDC, of the World Health Organization, of every doctor and epidemiologist in the state of Iowa, and do what's right for our children and right for our community and right for everyone working in the schools, and please put a mask mandate back in place. You did it for us last year, and I appreciate that with all my heart, and we are just asking that you keep our kids safe again. The biggest thing that we are scared of long-term effects that we don't know yet how it's going to affect this entire generation of kids. Right now they're saying it's mild effects and it's no more than a cold and it's no more than a flu. we do not know what they're going to look like in 20 years for neurological, liver damage, heart damage. I don't feel like it's our place to take those risks with that many children and with our community as a whole. So please, please consider. I was hoping that it was a vote that could be tonight, and I understand that because it was on the agenda, but I please ask you to hold an emergency meeting, and I will do whatever I can to help with that. So thank you. I appreciate everything you guys do.
Thank you.
Hello, I've never done this before. So
Okay, just
I'm
state your name and
Kelly Deere, 2160 Simpson Street, Dubuque.
Okay.
And I oppose a mask mandate. I have 7 children, many that struggle with a lot of different issues. They're adopted. The lockdown and mask mandates for them were horrendous. I had one of my children begin using again, who was a heroin addict that was in recovery. She started using. I had my other kids become suicidal, which they had in the past, but they had been doing good until all that happened. We don't know also, there were a lot of opinions given. We're talking about the science, but I didn't see any proof behind things that were said. It was more opinionated. And currently in our district of 10,300 students, there are 26 students that test positive for COVID. And of our staff, of 2,000, there are 5 positive staff members. We don't, I was going to say, we don't know the long-term effects of children wearing masks. It's like wearing a petri dish. That's my opinion. And so if we're going to follow the science, we also have to, take into consideration that we don't know the long-term effects of that. So that is just my opinion and my feelings on the mask mandate and lockdowns. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the board?
Hi, I'm Nicole Wolf-Murphy. I live at 2831 Jackson Street, and I am a Dubuque Community School bus driver. And this last year was very, very stressful and very tough on all staff, all parents, and all children of our district. But as a bus driver, these students would get on our buses and they would just sit in the seats and just sigh, a sigh of relief sometimes, just to get out of school for the day and just be able to take a breather from their masks. So this year I was pleasantly pleased that there was no mask mandate in the schools. However, they did continue the mandate on our school buses. However, you have these children now in the schools all day long, not masking. But they come out to our buses, we're handing them masks. We are giving them several masks throughout the day. These masks, where are these masks throughout the day if they're wearing the same one? Are they in their pocket? Are they in their school bag? Are they in a lunchbox? Are they on the floor? Are they in their locker? Where are these masks? And then they're expected to put these masks back on in the afternoon to ride home on a school bus. I also have students who would take their mask off last year, throw it on the floor. And as a driver or as a attendant on these school buses, are we expected to pick these masks up and put them back on their face or just give them a new one? How many times throughout the day or throughout that bus ride are we supposed to give them a new mask? And that is happening again this school year. I have students that eat their masks, spit them out, pull their ear strings off. Where's the liability in that if a student who is vested in the back of my bus ends up choking on that mask or choking on that string? So I just look at some of those things that I guess I don't know if some people stop to think about that. Do I agree that this virus could be contagious? Absolutely. But there again, like she showed or stated off of our Dubuque Community School dashboard, we have been successfully in school with these low number of positive cases. I also don't understand the contact tracing from last year to this year. I didn't follow the contact tracing. But there again, when we start contact tracing too, and the staff that are involved in that contact tracing, I just know for some personal experiences at transportation, we staff weren't taken off the buses. And I just wonder why. You know, was that because there wouldn't have been bus drivers to transport the students? I mean, I don't know, but I just often wondered that. Maybe because we didn't have close contact with them for the 15 minutes cumulative time. I'm not really sure, but there again, I think there needs to be some clear guidelines. But there again, the CDC's guidelines are strictly that, guidelines. I understand Governor Reynolds, the federal government or federal judge did overturn today, and I don't know how that's gonna all play out and how this all works, what Governor Reynolds is going to do in turn with that, but I just think that parents, staff, students need to make the right choice. Like Governor Reynolds said, she believes in her Iowa people to make the right choice. I think parents should be able to make the right choice for their students. Not all students are successful wearing a mask throughout the day, can't learn. You know, I just, as a district employee, it's hard for me to be on that bus. I want to say good morning to these kids. I want to see their smiles. I want to tell them to have a great day at the end of the day. I want to be able to talk to them, know what they are feeling. And I've had some pretty horrific stories told to me last school year about how they're feeling. And that was hard. It was hard to hear those stories that were told to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address the board? Okay.
I move that the Board of Education reinstate the rules of order and return to regular session.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to reinstate the rules of order and return to regular session. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
I move that the Board of Education approve those items listed in the consent agenda.
Second. It has been moved and seconded to approve those items listed in the consent agenda. Are there any items any board members wish to have pulled? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. And that takes us to our facilities and support services report. Ms. Parks.
All right, thank you. So we met on Tuesday of last week and spent the first hour of our meeting as a board discussing COVID protocols within the schools, getting an update from Superintendent Rangans about what the safety protocols are that are happening right now, as well as what the state of Iowa has outlined for laws related to the things that we can and can't do as a board, and then had quite a lengthy discussion about how to support the district's efforts to keep students safe within the school system and keep the staff and teachers safe as well, and what are ways that we as a board can help encourage whatever that looks like. So just to review a little bit, I mean, we could talk about, we've had a discussion before of some of the protocols that are happening, and folks are likely aware of that, especially if you're a parent. You've gotten it through Parent Square and it's on the website. But just to refresh some of the laws that we have to abide by at this point when we're making decisions as a board for how to move forward. And please step in if I'm misstating anything or we need to elaborate. But obviously the first one that is now a question mark was there is a law from the state of Iowa that prohibit us from requiring masks for students, staff, or visitors at school. We learned this afternoon, as many folks in the community did, that a judge has put an order forward that would temporarily halt that. And as a board, we have not discussed it because it just happened at 4 o'clock. So there'll be discussions happening soon related to that, and we'll be communicating quickly like what that means for our various stakeholders, the outcome of that decision.
The decision will be a public, I mean,
Yeah.
we have to figure it out. It won't be a closed, it'll be something done with the board in front of the public.
Yeah.
It won't be a discussion behind doors. I just want that to be very clear. With 24-hour notice of when this meeting will take place, should it have to go to that point.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Tammy. So more to come on that. And masks on buses is actually a federal requirement that the Iowa Department of Public Health reaffirmed. So that's a law that comes from the federal government, and the state has affirmed that that's what we also have to abide by on the bus. There's also been some question about isolation versus quarantine, and I appreciate talking to us about your concerns related to that, Lisa. We can require students who are sick to isolate and stay home until they are no longer infectious, according to the guidelines that we've gotten. Quarantine is a different process where you have to stay away from other people if you feel when you've been exposed to someone who's sick, even if you feel well. And the guidance that we get from the Department of Education, from the state of Iowa at this point, is that schools don't have the authority to quarantine students without the involvement of a public health agency. So our district's working with the VNA to do contact tracing and to work through those processes, but our decision-making around that is limited by the guidance.
So it's interesting because within about 24 hours or so of receiving your email, this guidance came out as a frequently asked question. And so what it basically says, if I can steal that from you, the question posed to the Department of Ed, can schools require quarantine for students who may have been exposed to COVID-19? And the response from the Department of Ed was no, schools do not have authority to quarantine students without the involvement of public health agencies. So we have been in conversations with the county a little bit to figure out what is that. So when a student is quarantined because of an at-home exposure, that is done by the VNA, and so they obviously have the authority and the knowledge to do that. But the quarantining of students, we are doing the contact tracing in schools, and so we don't have that authority. The only ones who have who can be quarantined currently are those who have a home exposure. The exposures at school. Now that could change, and you can be a voice in that, but currently we don't even have the authority to do that. As we found out today at 4:30, those things can change pretty quickly. But as we sit here today, the school district, that's why it says it's a parent choice to quarantine or not, because that's the level of authority that we've been given by the Iowa Department of Education.
And then the last thing we talked about was whether or not school personnel can hand out COVID tests to students. And that guidance also from the state was basically that's not something that we can do. Is that correct, too?
So actually, sorry, an update from this afternoon. I
Oh.
spoke with the person at the Iowa Department of Education who's in charge of that. And with the right policies and procedures in place, it's something that we may be able to get to in the next period of time. You may have noticed that Sioux City, there's an article in the paper at Sioux City was doing the rapid testing. This would all happen with parent consent, parent choice. The problem is you can't get a rapid test, or at least not very easily, from my understanding in the state. So we have ordered some take-home tests, and so with some policies and procedures, I mean, we'll see if we can put that into play. And that's mainly for people who don't have regular health care access. If you've got a family doctor, if you've got the connection with somebody, we would encourage you to go to testing there. Second step would be to go to one of the sites at Walgreens, Hy-Vee, whoever is still. The Test Iowa sites have closed, but there are places you can get tested. That would be the second step. The third sort of step is if you don't have access or there's a transportation barrier, we'd like to get to a point where we could give you an at-home test, because we would like for kids who show symptoms or of something who test out of that to be able to come back to school, because we want them to be gone from school for the shortest amount of time possible, if it's not COVID, obviously. Sorry.
No, that was good. Thanks. So, this was the one of the first discussions we've had this year about this issue. I think as a board, it was a good discussion. We'll be responsive as things change quickly and meet as necessary and involve you all as necessary to hear feedback about that. And then we went on to maybe less exciting but important aspects of the committee meeting that were several motions related to some district projects. So First, I move that the Board of Education approve the final acceptance of the central kitchen oven replacement project and authorize payment for final costs to Portson Construction Incorporated in the amount of $13,250 in accordance with the requirements of Iowa law and is more fully outlined in the submitted authorizing resolution.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the Board of Education approve the final acceptance of the central kitchen oven replacement project and authorize payment of final project costs to Portson Construction, Inc. in the amount of $13,250 in accordance with the requirements of Iowa law and as more fully outlined in the submitted authorizing resolution. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
I move that the Board of Education approve the request from Portson Construction, Inc. for early release of retained funds in the amount of $13,250 on the central kitchen oven replacement project in accordance with the requirements of Iowa law and as more fully outlined in the submitted authorizing resolution.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the Board of Education approve the request from Portson Construction, Inc. for early release of retained funds in the amount of $13,250 on the central kitchen oven replacement project in accordance with the requirements of Iowa law and as more fully outlined in the submitted authorizing resolution. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
I move that the Board of Education approve the submission of the request to the School Budget Review Committee in the amount of $562,737, or as determined by the Iowa Department of Education following DE audit review, in modified supplemental amount to provide 100% spending authority for 2021 excess cost of the LEP program funded through a cash reserve levy.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the Board of Education approve the submission of the request to the School Budget Review Committee in the amount of $562,737, or as determined by the Iowa Department of Education following DE audit review, in modified supplemental amount to provide 100% spending authority for 2021 excess costs of the LEP program funded through a cash reserve levy. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
Okay, finally, I move that the Board of Education approve the submission of the request to the School Budget Review Committee in the amount of $4,410,311, or as determined by the Iowa Department of Education following DE audit review, in modified supplemental amount to provide 100% spending authority for 2021 special education deficit funded through a cash reserve levy.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the Board of Education approve the submission of the request to the School Budget Review Committee in the amount of $4,410,311, or as determined by Iowa Department of Education following DE audit review, in modified supplemental amount to provide 100% spending authority for 2021 special education deficit funded through a cash reserve levy. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. That's it. Thank you very much.
Can I just add, I think,
Yes.
a quick question, procedural question, going back to the COVID conversation. When we're looking at the notion of significant exposure to a person who's positive for COVID, it's my understanding that there's a question from Ms. Tyler about, is it 15 minutes cumulative, or is it 15 minutes in a 24-hour period?
So again, that goes back to, unfortunately, our medical experts being on two different pages. So the CDC gives you one guideline, the Iowa Department of Public Health gives you the other.
Okay.
So we do the contact tracing and we notify parents when there's an exposure, but again, we can't do the quarantine piece. The other thing that we have done, and some data that I could share with the board and the community, is that we do track the students who were notified that they were an exposure to see if they then later become a positive, because we are interested in seeing, obviously, what those exposures turn into. So if I'm exposed on Tuesday, the following Wednesday, am I on, positive on the dashboard? So we are pulling that data as well. And of course, we're only 3 weeks in, right? It's third week of the school year. or I guess we're in the fourth week of the school year, but, so just because we do want to see, does that exposure ultimately turn into a positive or not? What are the risks associated with that? So that will obviously be something that I will bring as a data point to share with you when we have the upcoming conversation, as I'm sure we will around masks.
Thank you.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, it did, thank you.
Okay. Educational Programs Policy Committee report, Mr. Sansey.
Yeah, so we met on Wednesday, and some of the things that we talked about, number one, if you've been reading the papers this past week, workforce is a huge issue just throughout our community and throughout the country. So we have an amazing team headed by Miss Amy, who's looking at different creative ways to grow our own workforce for the future. So some of the things that we're doing to grow our own is looking at different financial incentives to recruit some of our subs and paras. We went out in the community. We have a magical school bus, is what I call it. And that bus literally just went throughout the community, just trying to educate our citizens about the different opportunities that we have to work for the district, and also to get students signed up for courses. We're working at the state level to make sure that our voice is heard, and making sure that the governors and the legislators are looking for different tools and incentives, again, to grow the workforce that we need to educate our students. We talked about financial literacy and getting that down at the younger age for our students. If you remember, the district was, I believe, ahead of the game when it came to educating our students with financial literacy, starting at the 9th grade level. And we really want to make sure that our younger students have that same opportunity to learn about managing money and working with budgets and things like that. Supporting our teachers with professional development and just making sure that we're constantly giving them the tools that they need, not only for themselves, but also to educate our students. And then we talked about an amazing partnership that we continue to have with NICC, just to make sure that our students are getting courses outside of kind of the 4-year pathway, but more of the 2-year, 1-year opportunities. So really making sure that we continue that great partnership with NICC, and then we review policies. And so that's what we talked about.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
New business? Anybody?
So I don't know if we want to talk about kind of next step moving forward, and so I appreciate that many of you were able to join us on short notice tonight. When there is an action item on an agenda, it needs to have 24 hours notice for community members so that it is a conversation that does happen in front of all interested parties. And so that's why tonight wasn't a decision-making point in regards to masks or non-masks, but we will. I haven't even had a chance to read the case yet. I mean, I found out about it a little bit before 4 o'clock, and then had to be ready for this meeting at 5:30. So tonight after the meeting, I'll read the case. We'll talk to our attorneys and everybody else involved, and then begin to process this. Quite honestly, it came out of the blue. There was a case last Friday that we were following very closely in Council Bluffs that was decided just the opposite way, where the judge didn't override the state, the governor's, the state law. And then this one today did. So there has been a little bit of a pendulum swing pretty rapidly. And so my question is, how much is that pendulum going to swing?
We know the governor is appealing it.
So I want to make sure that, again, the last thing I want to do to you all and your kids is to be back and forth. So we will be doing our due diligence, our research, having our conversations, and then putting out a process moving forward so that everyone in the community is well aware what that process will be. As you can imagine, my inbox is filling up rapidly. I'm sure by tonight it will be very full. And just like tonight, those opinions will be split. And so that is, obviously part of that. So is the science, so is the legality. All those things have to be taken into some level of consideration. So I guess what I'm trying to say in a long-winded sort of way is, yes, we'll have a process in the relatively near future, because we do want to communicate with our stakeholders about what we're going to do moving forward. And so we do want you to know that we have seen this. We do know this is out there, and we will be putting a process in motion and keeping you all informed along the way.
And I think if I can add to that, I think one of the messages that we all agreed upon at our last meeting, despite what the outcome is with mask or without mask, there is one common message that we all agree upon, and that's we're all in this together, right? That was a common theme that was spoken last year, and we want that to continue to be a theme. And no matter what, we all want what's best for students, right? And our teachers. So I think that's a common message that we have to continue to remind everyone that we all are serving because we want what's best for students and teachers. So I want to make sure we say that.
And are we looking at maybe sometime this week yet?
I'll
Just
communicate that
kind of
first,
wait and
I'll
see.
communicate that first thing in the
There's a
morning.
lot of information to be
Yeah,
had.
I mean, it won't be long, but I'll communicate that first thing in the morning, if that's okay.
So is there some assumption that we're gonna deviate from the normal meeting schedule for this? I mean, we don't know anything about this. We don't know what the process is or if there's gonna be an appeal process. I get concerned about overall general process. There's gotta be some systemic approach to this that is not knee-jerk, because we don't want to put a mask mandate, take away a mask mandate, put in a mask mandate, take away a mask mandate. It's one thing on buses, it's different in schools. And that's really tough on kids, and there's a lot of wear and tear on staff. And at some point, I would trust that our district leadership, like any other issue that would come before us, the district leadership, the paid staff who spend 40, 50, 60 hours a week doing nothing but being experts on how to serve kids' needs, would have a clear recommendation on this.
And we will.
So, does that mean a special meeting, are you thinking? Or does that mean we hit it in a committee meeting? Or what do you?
Well, I think that's, obviously dependent upon what comes about tonight and tomorrow. I do have meetings scheduled for first thing in the morning with the UEN Urban Education Network superintendents, as well as the attorneys that work with us there. So I can't predict that because I just don't know. I mean, it might be a short turnaround, or it may not, but I'll be communicating with you all tomorrow in regards to that.
Because I've been through a few of these before in the past, and we could have 50 people in the room who support masks. We could have 50 people in the room who can't stand the thought of their kid wearing a mask. All of them are taxpayers for the Dubuque Community School District. We can find cubby holes that have strong opinions either way. To me, that's not necessarily, we certainly want to listen to parent input, above all, because the citizens own the joint.
Yep.
We do want to have a process where it's more than just who got to you last. And I've seen school board decisions made, important school board decisions over the last 20 years as a school board guy on and off, where board members have literally voted based upon who got a hold of them last. And just so we have a clear, clean process.
Yep. So it'll be all about process and transparency.
To take an issue that's become a hot topic, that, as I said in the committee meeting, I'm pretty good with stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. I'm not real good with public health. And that's how the election process works. You have citizens who are regular folks who serve, but when the day's all said and done, the caliber of our staff that are the full-time leaders of the district, we need them to come forward with strong leadership and make sure that there's a clean process there, which we have in the past, at least in the past 10 years. So that's what I would hope for and ask on behalf of all 70,000 of our citizens.
Seems to me the bottom line is how will we keep our students and staff safe within the limits of the law?
Yep.
And the law is in a state of flux right now, apparently based on judicial rulings. So I welcome the fact that you're getting lots more information, that you'll share that with us, and that in the process, we can, as you're suggesting, Tom, make a more informed decision than just our own research. I mean, I think we're all in the business of caring enough about children and our staff and this community to be doing our own homework. But this certainly should afford us the latest and greatest information that we can operate with. So thank you for what you're about to share with us.
You're welcome.
I'm still trying to get up to speed because I'm basically filling a seat for 4 months. And so help me understand, fundamentally, is it a school board decision?
Well, I think in most districts, the
So I
school
truly
board
don't know.
is,
I
but
don't
the
know.
school board could vote to make it my decision.
Yep.
Or our decision, I don't want to say it that way, but it could be a district administrative decision. Yep.
I think the public is looking at it being a school board decision. That's just how I read it as with some of the people that I've heard from, because we're their voice of the public. And so therefore, but I don't know. I mean, we've done well because we've got great leadership to have it be, a lot of decisions with the leadership. But we've never had a subject like this. We've never had a situation like this come up. So I think it'd be a matter of what we think the public is expecting of us as a board.
And I hope the public would realize how crazy this topic is. I mean, we would have the public, we had the public come to us and ask us as board members, stock bond mutual fund guy, sociology professor, burger person, retiree from science classroom, and have asked us they would have us make a decision on what book kids are reading in a class in school, which I'm an old English teacher, I'm not qualified to make that decision. So my point is, I can understand the sense of urgency and passion that some citizens have. I truly do understand. I get it. It's what makes America great. You vote people in and they represent you. But there's that fine line of, and I truly don't know the answer, of what should a school board be deciding and what should be in the hands of the professionals that are doing this 24 hours a day. So.
And I think one of the challenges is that there's been less guidance this year coming from authorities above us in the state than there was last year. And so I think that just complicates everything even more in terms of how to come to the right process or the right decision.
So tell me about that, because again, I'm trying to get caught up. So there was more guidance last year than this year.
Yeah, the state, and please jump in, board, if I'm wrong, but the Department of Education provided districts with a lot more information about how you make decisions about moving online or to hybrid, what percentages were, of sick kids or staff in order to make those decisions, and all of that is not in existence now because that guidance has changed. And so with that just makes it even trickier, I think. It was already tricky last year, but at least there was something coming from above, whereas this year there's very little.
And it's been put into the place of individual parents to decide what they feel is best for their student, which sometimes you can't necessarily argue with that.
To speak the obvious, I think it's unfortunate it's become politicized.
Yes.
Here we are in the midst of a great chasm that's taken on political overtones substantial enough to make it even more complicated. So.
Well, I think we will wait and hear. We'll get more information tomorrow. We can debate whether or not how we go forward at this point is to be determined. We will get information.
And we will communicate to the public how that decision is going to be made.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
All right.
And yeah.
We'll just leave it at that right now because we're going in circles. So any other business to be brought before the board? All right, there being none, we are adjourned.